The road south did not care that I carried a forever under my ribs. It cared about ruts, mule droppings, and the way heat made every man meaner by noon. I walked rear rope again, dust stitching my ankles, the caravan a slow animal of jars and complaints stretched along a pale scar between hills. My name was still Sami when anyone used it. Most mouths preferred boy, thin one, you with the empties. That suited me. Names that stay small are harder to hunt. We had been 3 full days out from the limestone teeth when the country changed its breath. Scrub thickened, the hills lowered their shoulders. Smoke from other camps rose in thin lines that did not belong to us. The master cursed the mules into a tighter order and sent flank boys with sticks and optimism. I kept my eyes on heels and my mind on the fold under the sternum, where the other me waited like a held cough. Echocraft. I did not polish the words even inside my skull. Shine draws hands. I checked the latch instead. 1 pulse, 1 skin, 1 set of footprints unless arithmetic demanded interest paid in risk. Kel or Keth walked near the middle with a water skin and a joke he had already told twice. He tossed a glance back and mouthed something about my face looking like a closed shop. I showed him teeth without humor. He shrugged and faced forward. Road friendship is real and shallow at once. I liked him enough not to use him as cover if I could avoid it. Liking is a thread. Threads pull. At the first long rest, the master counted heads the way misers count copper. 18 backs that could haul. 9 mules that still argued with fate. A string of oil jars nested in straw like eggs that would ruin us if cracked. He jabbed a finger at me when he found a strap loose. If that jar kisses dirt, he said, your back will learn poetry. I tightened the strap and kept my mouth dull. Dull is a craft. After the ridge hunters and the town that almost stacked my face into a story, dull had become my favorite color. We moved again. Heat climbed. The knife wrap at my belt was clean and tight. The merchant's heavier coin still lived in the tunic seam, a small cold circle against skin when I twisted. I had not spent it. Spending leaves a trail of who ate well when he should have been hungry. Near midday, a drover from a northbound string stopped to trade news for shade. He spoke of coastal grain and client king lists that grew longer every week. He also spoke, lower, of road crews that did not buy what they took. Slavers, someone said. The drover spat. Not the old kind with a chain and a song, he said. Quiet ones, cloth-like traders, rope under the cart boards. They like thin backs and soft mouths. Boys who run errands, girls at wells, anyone who looks like rent. My stomach did a small cold turn. Thin backs, soft mouths, errand stock. The description sat on me like a wet cloak. I did not look around to see who else flinched. Looking is a confession of fear. I adjusted a rope and listened with my shoulders. The master waved the news away as if flies could be owned by gesture. Every road has teeth, he said. Keep the line. Anyone who wanders buys their own funeral. We rolled on. I practiced being one so hard my jaw ached from not doing anything. Appetite walked beside me anyway. Put a copy on the ridge as eyes. Put a copy behind the last mule as rear truth. Be a chain of beads along the road. Easy roads end at cages, I told it without moving my lips. At a dry wash, we slowed to pick a path among stones. That was when I first saw them. Not a full crew, not a banner, just 2 men on good sandals with trader cloth and eyes that counted living weight the way butchers count. They stood off the track under a thorn's broken shade as if resting. Their cart was small, canvas tight, mule sleek, too sleek for honest poverty. One man smiled at our master with too many teeth. The other watched the boys. He watched me for a breath longer than courtesy allows. Then his gaze slid to Kel or Keth, to the water skin, to the way Kel laughed with his throat open. Open throats are easy handles. I felt the fold under my ribs lean forward. I pressed it flat. Not yet. Not for a look. Looks are cheap. Acts cost blood and secrecy. The smiling man offered the master watered wine and a story about bandits ahead who preferred oil to coin. The master drank and spat and said his mules were uglier than bandits. Coin might have changed hands. From the rear, I saw the second man's fingers tap twice on the cart rail when our line of boys passed a certain rock. Signal or itch, I filed both. We left them behind. The wash climbed into a gravel bench. Far south, a darker green hinted at a watercourse, and the kind of campground every caravan wants and every quiet hunter learns by heart. Night would come. Night is when rope under boards prefers to work. I took my late water ration and sat with my back to a wheel while the master walked the ring. Kel dropped beside me and tore bread. "You keep staring at empty road," he said. "Dust in the eyes," I said, "makes shapes." He accepted that because roadmen accept half answers when bread is shared. We chewed. He talked about a coast town woman who might remember him if he arrived richer. I made the small noises that keep friendship cheap and alive. When he left, I was still one boy with crumbs on his tunic and a cold coin against his ribs. Split only in shadow. Strike only as accident. Live long enough to stock ages. Become inevitable without becoming famous. If slavers wanted thin backs, they would find this line sooner or later. If they found it, I would not be braver than on the ridge. I would be two kinds of careful, and only one of those kinds would be allowed to have a face in the firelight. Stars came hard and numerous. I took a middle watch because middle turns still have witnesses. I walked my sector, counted shapes that belonged, and once let a hand width of otherness press inside my wrist like a second heart learning manners. Then I put it away, nose dry, good. On the far road, no torches. I finished the watch and slept as one, knife wrapped tight, law tighter, dust line south still owning tomorrow, while something with rope under canvas learned our pace from behind the dark. Dawn put a dirty gold on the gravel bench and turned every tired face into the same mask of dust. We loaded, we cursed, we moved. The sleek mule and the smiling trader were gone from the wash as if they had been a heat shimmer with teeth. That did not comfort me. Men who vanish clean are men who know how to arrive clean later. By mid-morning, the green line became trees and a ribbon of actual wet. Caravans love water the way flies love fruit. 3 other strings were already staked along the bank, a temporary town of canvas, dung, and bargaining. Children ran, a woman washed linen, someone fried onions in oil that smelled like a better life. The master claimed a patch upstream of the worst smell and downstream of the best shade, which meant he argued for half an hour and won nothing honest. I hauled jars, set chocks, and kept my head lower than my shoulders. In a crowd of strangers, the law gets heavier. More eyes, more mouths, more ways for a miracle to become a market story before sunset. I saw the sleek mule again near noon. Same cart, same tight canvas. The smiling man bought flatbread and laughed too loud at a joke about kings. The second man, the counter of living weight, repaired a wheel that did not need repairing, while his gaze traveled our boys the way a rake travels straw. A third joined them from another string, thicker shoulders, a pale scar through one eyebrow, hands that had done rope work until rope work lived in the tendons. He did not smile. He drank water and listened. Listening is a weapon older than knives. Kel or Keth noticed none of this. He was busy losing a copper to a shell game and laughing when he lost. I pulled him away with a lie about the master wanting the water skins rinsed. "You are a storm in a cup," he said, but he came. I did not explain. Explanations create witnesses. Afternoons stretched. I found reason to pass the sleek cart twice on errands that were half real. Under the canvas edge, when a breeze lifted it a finger's width, I saw not grain sacks but coiled line, dark and oiled, and a wooden brace that had no business in a bread trade. Rope under canvas, the drover's warning put on flesh. I walked on with empty hands and a full cold stomach. Appetite offered fire and 3 bodies. Theatre. Story sticks harder than blood. So I marked faces instead. Smiler, counter, scar, wheel nick at the rim. Scar's left sandal sole thinner than the right. Details are quieter than heroes and more useful at night. Near evening, a girl from another caravan went to the far reeds with a jar and did not come back as fast as jars usually return. Her mother called once, then twice, then with a pitch that cut through onion smoke. Men stood, some grabbed sticks. The master spat and said it was not our cloth, not our problem, keep our line. I was already moving before I decided I was allowed to. Not running, running is a flag. Walking fast with a water skin as if sent. In the reeds the light went green and broken. Mud took my ankles. I heard a scuffle short as a held breath, then a man's low curse, then quiet that tried too hard. I stopped behind Willow and let the fold under my ribs wake one notch. Not a full body, a ghost pulse, enough to feel direction. Left, closer to the deeper channel. 2 adult weights, one smaller, twisting. Law said, do not perform. Law also said, live long enough, and living long includes not watching a snatch become normal if you can break it without becoming a tale. I chose a middle sin. I hurled a stone high into the far reeds so it crashed like a heavier body arriving. Then I shouted in a voice not quite mine, deeper, as if a man had come from the opposite bank. Leave it, I barked. Patrol, rustle, a grunt. The smaller weight thrashed. I threw a second stone farther and crashed Willow with my real shoulder, as if more than one person moved. For a breath I almost split full, I held. 2 mouths, one lie, even if one mouth was only a thrown stone and a stolen pitch of voice. It worked enough. Scar's shape broke from the green with the girl half lifted, saw no patrol, saw only a thin boy with a water skin, and made a choice. He shoved her into the mud and ran low toward the cart side of camp. Smiler's laugh was gone from the bread stalls when I glanced that way. The cart's canvas was being snugged by hands in a hurry. The girl spat mud and cried without sound. I got her up and walked her toward the calling mother with the water skin still in my hand like a costume. People arrived in a clot of noise. The mother clutched. A man from their string ran toward the cart track and found only dust and a nick-wheeled roomer already joining the road south of the trees. What did you see? Someone asked me. Reeds, I said. A man running, maybe 2. I threw stones. I am not brave. Laughter, thin and grateful. A woman pressed a date into my palm. Gratitude is a thread. I ate the date so I would not have to carry the thread publicly. The master found me when the clot broke and hit my shoulder with the heel of his hand. Not quite a beating. You leave the line again for strangers, and I will sell your hours to someone who likes screams, he said. We move at first light. This bank is rotten with soft stories. Yes, I said. Night came dirty. Other camps posted more watches. Our master posted the same number and told us to sleep ready. I sat with my back to a wheel and cleaned mud from my knife wrap without drawing the blade. Kel sat near and did not joke. You sound different when you shout, he said quietly, like someone else wore your throat. Dust, I said. Fear. Both change a voice. He watched me too long, then he nodded once, not fully sold, and rolled into his blanket. A half-belief is better than a full story. Under the blanket, I let the ghost pulse rise and fall 3 times, small as a secret handshake with myself. Nose stayed dry. Somewhere down the dark road, a sleek mule pulled rope and unfinished hunger. They had lost a girl and gained a reason to be careful. Careful slavers are worse than bold ones. They wait for the boy who throws stones and shouts like a patrol to walk alone. I slept as one. I woke with grit in my teeth and the coin cold against my ribs and the chapter's true shape in my chest. Bait, clone, warfare as accident, and a law that would bend without breaking if rope came for our own. We left the watercourse at first light with the master's curses for music and the other camps still arguing about reeds and shadows. I walked rear rope with mud still freckled on my calves. South again. The hills opened into a wider plain where the road became a pale braid and heat had more room to punish. By the second rest, I knew we were followed, not close, not stupid, a dust smudge that appeared when our line climbed and vanished when we dipped. Could have been another string. My bones said Scar and Smiler and Counter, learning our rhythm the way wolves learn a herd that refuses to scatter. I told the master. He laughed with his belly and said every road grows eyes if you stare long enough. Then he put me farther back with the empties and a lame mule that needed a hand on the lead. Isolation dressed as duty. If the Snatch wanted a thin back, it now had a thinner herd around that back. Kel tried to drift rear with water. The master barked him forward. I caught Kel's eye and shook my head a fraction. He frowned and went. Good. Threads pull both ways. Midday ate the plain. My water skin ran low. The lame mule stopped as if prayer might fix a tendon. I coaxed, pulled, whispered ugly promises. In that small noise, I missed the first approach. A cart track joined ours from the east. Fresh droppings on the Scar. A heavier, darker animal pulled a covered frame that looked like a household move until you saw how the cover hung too straight, stiffened from inside. Scar walked the left flank on foot. Counter walked the right. Smiler sat the bench with a hat that made him look kindly if you were a fool. Broken axle up ahead, Smiler called to me in trader song. Share a pull and I share water. The lame mule between us was a wall and a trap. I glanced toward the main line. Dust and distance. Shouts too far. The fold under my ribs stood up like hair on a cold neck. Not yet a full split, I told myself. Not in open plain with sun for a witness. I showed dull. Axel, I said, where? Just over the rise, Smiler smiled. Your master will thank you when we are not blocking his jars. Counter's hand rested near his belt, where rope heads peaked like tame snakes. Scar had already angled behind my lame mule's rump, cutting the easy run back to the line. Professional, quiet. I took one step as if willing, then stumbled hard into the mule's side, making the animal bray and sidestep. In the bray I split, not clean, not roof practice pretty, road panic birth. The snap tore a white line through my skull, and salt iron filled my nose before the second body even finished standing. He came into being on the far side of the dark mule, low, already moving, same tunic dust, same rope belt, knife in hand because I could not risk him empty. For a blink we were two accidents with one mind, and the plane tried to count us and failed. Scar saw one boy where he expected one, and then a second shape where the mule's bulk peeled away. His eyes went wide the way men's eyes go when arithmetic insults them. Counter started a shout. Smiler's kindly hat turned into a curse. My road body drove a shoulder into Scar's knee before the shout matured. My mule-side body slashed the darker animal's lead and slapped its neck to send it sideways into Counter's path. Not theater for an audience. Mess for escape. Scar hit grit. Counter tangled with hooves. Smiler stood on the bench with a short club and no smile left. Run, I told myself in both skins, but running as two in open light is how legends get born. One of me had to vanish. I reeled the mule-side body mid-sprint, a hard inward fold that made the plane tilt. He snapped out of the world behind the thrashing animal. I staggered as one again, nose wet, eyes full of sparks, and used the stagger to look like a boy who had merely been knocked around by a spooked mule. Scar grabbed for my ankle. I kicked and felt bone under heel. Then I was up and dragging the lame mule into a mad hobble toward the caravan dust, screaming the only safe alarm. Raiders, I screamed. Rope men. The line convulsed. Sticks appeared. The master roared. Two drovers ran toward me with more courage than sense. Behind me, Smiler's crew chose not to fight a full string in daylight. They peeled east in a boil of dust, unfinished, furious, carrying the knowledge that a thin boy had been in two places at once for the length of a bray. That knowledge was a blade with my name on both edges. The drovers reached me. One wiped at my face and showed me his fingers red. Mule kicked your nose, he said, already building the story I needed. Yes, I said, and let the lie sit in my mouth like a second tongue. Mule, panic, raiders, no twins, no seam, no cave. Kel arrived breathless. I saw your back in two places, he whispered. Then one, heat shimmer, I said. Fear does that. Count again. One, he counted. One boy, blood on the lip. He chose the easier world with a sharp nod. Silence from him was a gift I had not earned cleanly. The master hit me for leaving spacing, then ordered the line tight and moving. He did not chase the east dust. Oil mattered more than justice. Justice is loud. I needed quiet hours. We made a dry camp early. Watches doubled. I sat with a wet rag on my face while the ghost of the second body tingled in the wrists. Mind static whispered. I breathed until the grit settled. Appetite wanted a victory lap. I gave it inventory. They know something impossible happened. They lack daylight proof. Kel almost became a priest of the wrong miracle. Next time, no Axel stories. Next time, the middle of the line, or Kel because my eyes go to him, or a night bag over the head that multiplies. 2 mouths, 1 lie, had saved the reed girl with almost no craft. Today, craft showed teeth in open sun. The law still stood. It just had blood on it now. I took a late watch. Under cloak, I pulsed a hand-width otherness and reeled it clean. No more panic births if choice remained. East Dark admitted nothing. Scar could wait with a bad knee and new hate. Smiler could buy friends. Counter could write my shape into a list worse than Rome's. I lay down as one boy kicked by a mule. The camp believed simple blood. Under that belief, I began bait clone warfare. Not brave, not many in public, but a snatch closing on a boy who was never only one, while every witness swore they had heard one mouth tell one ordinary lie. Morning put a crust of cold on the plain before the sun returned to its old cruelty. I woke with dried blood in the crease of my nostril and a plan that had grown teeth overnight. Bait clone warfare. Ugly words if spoken. Clean tools if kept secret. Bait needs a shadow. The shadow cannot look like a miracle. The shadow must look like luck, stupidity, bad ground, and other men's fear of being alone with rope. I drank thin water and chewed a strip of goat that tasted of smoke and the master's spite. Around me the camp packed with the brittle energy of people who had almost been robbed of a body and wanted distance more than revenge. The master put me on middle rope for a change, between jars and the water skins, where eyes could find me and hands could count me. Punishment dressed as protection, or protection dressed as ownership. Same knot either way. Kel walked near enough to pass a skin and not near enough to whisper. His silence from the night held. Once our eyes met and he looked away first, which was either mercy or the start of a story he was writing in private. I could not climb into his skull and sand the memory smooth. I could only feed the road more ordinary Sami until ordinary outweighed impossible. At the first rise, I asked the master for leave to scout a side track that cut toward a dry cistern marked by old white stones. Caravans used it when the main wells soured. He grunted yes because full skins make quiet boys, and quiet boys haul better. I took 2 empty skins and walked off the braid alone. Alone is when bait begins. Alone is also when slavers prefer to close. Behind a spill of rock, I split clean. Roof manners, breath counted, second body seated 3 paces away before he opened his eyes, link steady, nose only a promise of salt, not a flood. He wore my face and my dust and a slightly different set of creases in the tunic because I could not forge laundry. Good enough at distance. I sent him wide along the cistern path as visible errand boy, skins bouncing, a little too casual. I kept the original body low in the rock spill, as the shadow that would not be in the story if the story went right. 2 mouths, 1 lie. Today the lie was simpler. There is only one thin boy on this path, and he is foolish enough to walk it without a stick. My scout self whistled a flat tune badly. Whistling says I am not afraid to men who hunt fear. It also carries. In the mind net I felt both sets of feet, both sets of lungs, the slight lag like an echo in a cheap cistern. Near is clear. Even this short split hummed with the reminder that far would be noisier. No smiler on the white stones, no scar, only lizard heat and a cistern that held a black coin of water under a crust of leaves. Scout me filled skins. Shadow me watched the approaches. A rider passed on the main braid without turning. A pair of women with baskets took one look at the lonely path and chose the longer way. Smart. On the walk back, I reeled the shadow into the scout before the camp's outer eyes could stack us. One boy, 2 heavy skins, nose dry enough to pass. The master saw full skins and forgot why he had wanted me counted in the middle. He put me rear again. Patterns are a language. I had spoken obedience in it. That afternoon, I built the next piece. Bait is not only a body in the open. Bait is a habit enemies can predict. I made a habit of needing privacy at the same bend of light each evening, a walk to the scrub with a digging stick, as if bowels and dignity still mattered. Same direction, same count of steps, same small complaint to whoever stood near about bad water. Predictable boys get collected. I wanted collection on ground I had already walked as 2. Kel caught the pattern by the second evening and frowned. "You sick," he said. "Water," I said, "or onions, or both." He offered me a pinch of dried mint from a packet he claimed a coast woman had given him. I took it because refusing gifts from almost friends makes almost friends into questions. The mint helped nothing and helped everything. Rituals calm the face. On the 3rd day of the new habit, dust east of the road took a shape again. Not the stiffened cover frame, a lighter cart with 2 mules and a canvas that tried to look poor. Counterdrove. A new man sat beside him with a face like a shut knife. Scar walked behind on foot, knee-wrapped, limp-owned and used as theatre of weakness. Smiler was absent. Men like Smiler hire the next smile when the first one cracks. They did not approach. They paced us until dusk and camped short of our ring by enough distance to look respectful. Respectful is a kind of teeth. I took my bower walk at the usual light and felt 3 pairs of attention lean from that short camp like spears laid flat in grass. Shadow time. Behind the first scrub, I split. Scout body continued the walk, slow, soft-mouthed, a boy thinking about mint and onions. Shadow body belly crawled opposite, knife out, counting scrub gaps, placing himself where a snatch line would have to cross if it wanted the visible fool. They did not come that night. Waiting is also a craft. My scout finished the lie of dignity and returned. I reeled the shadow in the last belt of dark before firelight could do arithmetic. In the net, I tasted their patience like metal. They had seen a boy who multiplies under panic. They wanted a boy who multiplies under planning so they could bag the trick with the body. I sat late with the knife on my knee and refined the doctrine out loud in a whisper the coals could not carry. Never 2 in the same eyeline. Never vanish where a living man is staring. Never let Kel stand where the second footprint falls. If they bag the bait, the shadow cuts rope, not throats, unless throats are the only door. If they bag the shadow by mistake, reel before they can make a cage into a temple of proof. If proof begins, burn the scene with ordinary chaos, mules, fire, shouting, the master's stick, anything that makes witnesses disagree. Kel stirred in his blanket and muttered a coast name. I stopped whispering. Even doctrine can become a story if a friend wakes at the wrong word. Before sleep, I checked the coin seam, the knife wrap, the fold under the ribs. Somewhere in the short camp, Counter sharpened a plan on Scar's hate. Bait needs a shadow. I had both. The road would decide how soon the Snatch tried to feed, and whether 2 mouths could keep one lie until dawn counted a single boy. They came on the 5th evening of the habit, which meant they could count as well as I could. Light was the color of weak tea. I announced bad water to no one in particular, and walked the usual path with the digging stick. The short camp east had looked half asleep all afternoon. Half sleep is a costume. Behind the first scrub, I split with clean breath and a nose that only threatened. Scout body kept walking. Shadow body slid into a thorn hollow I had tested with bare knees the night before, until I knew which branch bit and which only threatened. Scout me whistled the flat tune again, softer. The sound felt stupid in both throats. Stupidity is camouflage. Scar came from the left with surprising quiet for a wrapped knee. The shut knife face came from the right with a sack already open, hemp smelling of old grain and older fear. Counter waited farther back with a short club and the calm of a man who believes the world is a column of numbers that always ends in his favor. I let them. Bait that fights too early teaches the wrong lesson. The sack went over Scout-Me's head in a practiced drop. Arms pinned, stick knocked away, a knee in the back forced air out. Shadow Me felt the dark cloth and the crush as if it were happening to the only body, because in the net it was. Panic clawed. I held the shadow still by pure ugly will. Move too soon and they see the hollow birth a twin. Move too late and the bait becomes a cart problem with no clean reel line. They dragged Scout Me 3 body lengths toward a gap in the scrub where a rope coil waited like a pet. Shut Knife hissed about quiet and silver if quiet held. Scar laughed once through his nose, a mean little sound that remembered a kicked knee. Now, I told the net. Shadow Me came out of the thorn on Scar's blind side and cut the rope coil's main loop before any wrist had entered it. Then Shadow Hands shoved Scar hard into Shut Knife, a tangle of adult weight and surprise. Scout Me, still bagged, went dead weight and twisted the way sacks of grain do not. For a breath they held one boy and were hit by another who had not been there. Counter's numbers broke. He shouted a word that might have been demon and might have been a name from a worse market. Club rose. I needed one lie ready for any mouth that lived through the next 10 breaths. The lie was, the bagged boy had a friend in the scrub. Not a twin, a friend. Friends are allowed by the world. Shadow Me used Counter's club rise to step inside and drive a fist into the soft place under the ribs where breath keeps its keys. Counter folded. Scar grabbed at Shadow Me's tunic and got a cut across the back of the hand for tuition. Shut Knife tried to keep the sack locked and lost it when Scout Me's skull jerked back into his nose. The sack came half off. Light stabbed. Scout Me saw 3 angry faces and 1 other Sami, and nearly ruined everything by staring. Do not look at yourself. Law older than words. Scout eyes went to dirt. Shadow eyes went to the gap toward camp. Mules, I decided, and the net agreed. Shadow Me sprinted not toward safety, but toward our ring's outer picket line, already shouting thieves in a voice pitched like a scared hireling. Scout Me kicked free of Shut Knife and ran opposite, sack still half on, a blind animal crashing brush, the better to make 2 directions of noise without 2 faces traveling in the same eye line. Counter tried to rise. Scar cursed and chose not to chase both. Shut Knife held his nose with both hands and leaked. Camp answered with sticks and the master's roar. Bodies poured. In the scramble, I reeled Shadow Me behind a parked cartwheel, while every gaze went toward the east scrub and the thrashing half-sacked Scout. Real snap hid under a mule's sudden scream when a stranger's thrown stone, mine from a former life of thrown stones, kissed its flank. One boy tumbled into the ring, tearing hemp from his head, nose wet, eyes wild. One boy nowhere. Witnesses found arithmetic they could live with. Ambush, friend in the brush who ran, rope men scattering. Where is the other? A drover yelled, meaning the friend. Gone, I gasped, as the only Sami present. He ran when I fell. I do not know him. He hit them and ran. Lies work best when they contain a bone of shame. A boy who needed a stranger's help is smaller than a boy who multiplies. Small is safe. They swept the scrub and found blood drops, a dropped club, a sack, and no friend. Smiler's heirs had already dragged Counter away into thickening dark. Scar's limp made a ugly rhythm in the distance and then faded. The master raged about oil and schedules and boys who paint targets on his line with their soft guts. He hit me once for drama and then ordered double watch and an early march. Kel found me washing hemp smell off my neck with a rag and river dribble from a skin. Your friend, he said carefully, the one who hit them. He ran like you run. Everyone runs the same when afraid, I said. Kel's jaw worked. He looked at my hands. Shadow Me had cut Scar. Scout Me had not held the knife in that fight. A thin red line decorated a knuckle I did not remember scraping on brush. Thorn, I said before he asked. I showed him a matching scrape on the forearm I invented by dragging skin across a real branch while he watched. Pain is a good ink for lies. He exhaled through his teeth. "If you have a brother on this road," he said, very low, "you should tell the master before the master invents a worse story." "I have no brother," I said, and let the truth of that sentence stand on a hidden second meaning. No brother, only me, many and still no brother. Kel nodded as if he had been given a closed door and had decided not to kick it tonight. He pressed the last of his mint into my palm and left. Threads pull. This one held without unraveling, barely. I sat first watch as one bruised boy among nervous men. The fight replayed in doubled angles inside the net. Mind static buzzed low. Bait clone warfare spent more than sweat. I chewed mint and called it medicine. Doctrine updated without mercy. They will not believe a helpful stranger forever. Next time nets for two, or a paid hollow watcher, or a priest's word for demon. Near exposure had a new face, a whole ring that had heard me invent a friend who ran like me. Two mouths, one lie. The lie was growing teeth. Feed it carefully or it eats the boy who speaks it. By noon the next day, the helpful stranger had grown a height, a scar, and in one telling, a Roman sandal. Lies travel faster than mules and eat less fodder. I walked middle rope and listened to my own fiction come back wearing other men's mouths. He was taller than the thin one, a drover said. No, said another. Same size, moved like a cat in a granary. Demon, muttered a man who liked temple talk when scared. Twins born wrong. That last one put ice under my tongue. I laughed once, short, the way you laugh at a child who names a cloud a dragon. Twins, I said, sure, and the master is a senator. It was a hireling who wanted Scar's purse and missed. He ran because he is not stupid. Some nodded, some did not. The master barked silence and miles. Miles help if no new blood feeds a story. We made those miles through low walls and tired olive trees, a hamlet squatted by a crossroads with a well and a shrine stone rubbed smooth by frightened hands. The master bought onions and news. Slaver crews had hit a wall string 2 nights east. A client king rider had posted a notice about unlicensed chains. Rome was a rumor with better boots nearer the sea. None of it named a multiplying boy. Good. Named problems grow offices. I filled skins at the well and kept my face in the bucket's reflection long enough to confirm one head, one mouth. The shrine stone waited. I did not touch it. Touching gods is how priests learn your heat. A woman selling watered wine watched me too long. You the reed boy, she said, or the bag boy. Stories braid. I am the onion boy today, I said, and held up the master's net. She snorted and lost interest. Interest is a tax. I prefer not to pay. Kel stayed near through the hamlet and only relaxed when walls fell behind. His silence had become a partnership I had not asked for. I gave him small truths as decoys. I am scared of rope. I hate the master's stick. I want coast wages and a door that locks. All true, all incomplete. That night we camped in a stone pen that had once held sheep. I skipped the bowel walk habit on purpose. Patterns that feed you can also feed them. Instead, I took farthest picket by a thorn where dark made a wall. I split-seated, knee to knee with myself, and practiced vanishing at different speeds. Slow reel with no nosebleed, fast reel with iron tears, mid-reel under a forced cough to mask the face's spasm. The cough trick worked. I filed it. Then the dangerous drill. Scout on picket, shadow 100 quiet paces toward the road to listen. Distance put grit in the net at once, sand in oil, voices somewhere not our pen, too far to word. I reeled before static became a fork in the will. Near is clear, far is a lesson I was not ready to fail with Scar's hate still fresh. Counter's calm numbers sat in my memory like a problem on a slate. He had said demon as if labeling a jar. Labels travel to buyers. If I only reacted, they would choose the ground forever. So I thought like a counter of living weight. What did they want? Thin backs, resale. What did they fear? Noise, officers, witnesses who agree. I did not need them to fear a demon. Demon stories attract priests. I needed ordinary ruin, lost coin, broken cart, a trail cursed by bad luck. Bad luck is a cloak miracles can wear. I woke to men arguing about the stranger again. One claimed he had seen the friend at the watercourse throwing stones in the reeds. Stories were braiding events I had wanted separate. Reed boy, bag boy, friend, twin. The braid, if tightened, could hang me. I made myself useful with mule feed before anyone asked me to settle the debate. Usefulness is a kind of silence. On the march, I drifted rear and spoke carefully to a talkative drover who loved his own fear. That friend of mine, I said, as if ashamed, was no friend. I think he runs with the rope men and plays both sides, hits them for show, runs before honest sticks arrive. The drover's eyes lit. I knew it, he said, though he had known nothing. Snake among snakes, he carried the new lie forward like a gift. By the second rest, the helpful stranger had become a traitor hireling, uglier and safer. A traitor can vanish down any road. A twin must be explained forever. Kell heard the traitor version at the waterskin. You changed the song, he said. Songs change when you remember better, I said. He studied my face. You are either the best liar on this road or the loneliest boy I have met. Both can be true, I said, and surprised myself with how much throat went into it. Kell almost smiled. Then he did not. If they come again, he said, shout my name. I will bring a stick and not a story. I do not want your name in their mouths, I said. Too late for some kinds of too late, he said, and walked back to line. Threads pull, alley, liability, witness, friend. The law had not forbidden friends. It had only warned that affection is a door. I checked the latch and found it strained. South widened toward a market town the master named with greed. Markets multiply eyes. Markets also bury stories under fresher gossip if you feed them onion prices and a fistfight about measures. I intended to bury. If Smiler's heirs followed us into streets, their next snatch would fail so ordinary it would look like incompetence, not miracle. 2 mouths, 1 lie. The lie now had branches. Mule kick, helpful traitor, bad water walks abandoned, a boy who flinched on cue. Under the branches the route stayed simple. Never perform, never confess, never let the count of bodies equal the count of truths in any living witness's mouth. Toward evening, a boy from another string ran past laughing about twin demons on the plain. My jaw hurt from dullness. I laughed with him until he believed we shared the joke. Sharing the joke is how you keep from becoming it. The market town arrived as smell before walls. Fish that had traveled too far, dye vats, fried dough, animal fear, and the sweet rot of fruit crushed under sandals. Our line squeezed through a gate where a bored man with a tally stick counted mules and ignored boys. I loved him for his boredom. Bureaucratic half-attention is a kind of blessing. The master sold oil with both hands and a voice that could strip paint. He rented a yard behind a chandler's shop for 2 nights and told us if anything grew legs and walked, we would grow scars to match. I unloaded until my palms split, and then unloaded more because pain keeps the face honest. Extra eyes lived everywhere. Porters, beggars who were not beggars, a woman selling combs who never looked at combs, client king men in decent cloth drinking under an awning while their spears leaned like lazy threats. Somewhere closer to the sea, Rome's rumour wore better boots. Here the boots were local and still heavy enough. I ran errands because errands are maps. Alley widths, roof heights, which dogs slept, which dogs bargained with growls, where the tanner's ditch made honest men turn aside, where a second body could stand for 10 breaths without becoming a miracle. Kell stayed close in the streets and looser in the yard. He had appointed himself a stick without asking the handle. I did not thank him. Thanks are invoices. Near the grain measures, I saw Shut Knife's profile under a different hat. He bought nothing. He watched the yard gate as if gates were livestock. Counter appeared an hour later at a copper changer's table, calm as math, changing small coin into smaller patience. Scar I did not see. Scar would be in a room icing hate into a plan. They had followed the oil. Of course they had. Oil strings are slow wealth. Boys are portable wealth. Combined cargo makes a hunter's mouth water. I completed a real errand for lamp wicks and a false one for my own nerves, looping past the changer twice without meeting Counter's eyes. In a dead end between stacked amphora shards, I split-seated, quick and clean, and sent the second body up a low wall to a tar-streaked roof, shadow on high, Scout in the lane returning to the yard with wicks. Two mouths could now watch the same street from angles that refused to stand together in any single witness's frame. From the roof I saw Scar at last, knee still careful, talking to a man who wore a clerk's stained fingers and a smile like a fee. Money changing hands, information then, or permission, or both. The clerk pointed toward our chandler's yard and then toward a narrow service lane that backed it. I felt the plan click without hearing words. Night lane, quiet bag, cart waiting. I reeled the roof body before a child on a higher terrace could decide the town had grown a twin angel. Snap under a cough. Nose damp, not open. Scout me walked into the yard with wicks and a face like dust. Night market noise rose and fell like surf. The master drank watered wine and counted profits out loud to punish us with his joy. I asked for first deep night watch on the back lane side. He agreed because no one else wanted the lane's smell. Kel tried to take it with me. I told him the master wanted him on the gate. A lie. He frowned, believed enough, and went. I preferred his anger to his body in the crossfire. At the turn of the watch, I split in the privy dark of the yard corner and left Scout me visible on a crate with a stick, head nodding like a boy losing to sleep. Shadow me went over the back wall into the service lane and lay under a jut of stone with the knife free and the law tighter than the wrap. They came softer than before. Four this time, shut knife, counter, Scar. The fee-smile clerk holding a shuttered lamp and looking unhappy about mud on his sandals. A cart waited at the lane's far bend with a canvas already shaped like a throat. Counter pointed at Scout me's nodding shape over the wall line. Numbers, easy. Scar's limp vanished when he needed speed. They brought a wider net, literally. Mesh weighted at the edges, the sort used for panicked goats and panicked people. I let them get the net up onto the wall stones. Then Shadow Me cut the cart mule's hobble and slapped the animal into chaos down the lane. At the same breath, Scout Me jerked awake and screamed thieves with honest terror because the net's shadow had already kissed his hair. Yard woke, gate yelled. The clerk dropped the lamp and set his own sleeve briefly on fire, a comedy I had not budgeted and gladly accepted. In the mess, I needed the net not to hold a miracle. Scout Me fell backward off the crate into the yard, inside, tangled only in his own stick. Shadow Me stayed laneside long enough to shove Scar's face into the wall when Scar turned toward the mule noise, then reeled through pure will under cover of the clerk's shriek. One boy in the yard, 0 boys in the lane. 4 hunters with a cart mule gone and a net caught on wall shards like a confession of intent. Men poured from our yard and a neighboring stable. Someone blew a cheap horn. Client King drinkers arrived with spears and the irritability of interrupted wine. Counter's calm cracked into a merchant's protest about mistaken alleys. Shut knife vanished. Scar tried to be a victim of mule panic. The clerk babbled fees and damp sand. I sat in the dirt inside the wall and let people trip over me. Better to be an obstacle than a centerpiece. When a spearman asked what I saw, I gave him one mouth and one lie. Men on the wall, I said. A net, a cart. I fell. I am not brave. Look at the lane. They looked. They found net, blood from Scar's nose on stone, hoof gouges, no twin, no demon, only the ordinary filth of a snatch gone clumsy. The spearman liked clumsy criminals more than miracles. He took names that were false and coin that was real, and ordered the lane cleared before dawn market traffic. The master hit me for sleeping on watch, and then, rarest coin of all, gave me a heel of good bread because the oil had not been touched. I ate in the dark and felt the static of a short, hard split drain out of my wrists. Near exposure had brushed us again. Roof child, yardmen, spearmen. Kel's absence I had manufactured. Yet the count in every living mouth stayed 1. Bait had worked without a visible twin. Chaos had been ordinary. For the first time since the plane, I slept as if the law and the world had signed a temporary truce in mule dung and net mesh. Temporary is a word that bites when the sun returns. I knew that even as I slept. Morning market opened like a wound that sold spices. I was sent for nails and twine and came back with both and a new problem. The fee-smile clerk from the lane was not in a cell. He sat at a writing board under the grain awning, fingers stained, recording measures for a man who mattered enough to own a canopy. Power loves clerks. Clerks love leverage. He saw me. His smile returned thinner. He lifted a hand as if hailing a cousin. "You," he called, "errand boy from the Chandler yard. A word." Kell stiffened beside me. I had not asked him to come. He had come anyway. I passed him the nails. "If I am not back before the shadow hits that post," I said, "tell the master I am buying twine from a thief, and then do not look for me looking like a hero." Kell's mouth flattened. He nodded once. I went to the clerk's board with shoulders low and knife wrap loose enough to draw. Up close he smelled of lamp oil and fear sweat poorly washed. "Last night was a misunderstanding," he said lightly, for any ear that grazed us. "This morning is business. Coin for the boy who helps certain men recover property. Also a notice that can be written about a yard that harbors unlicensed fighters and hirelings who appear and vanish. Notices reach Spears. Spears reach Masters. Masters sell boys to solve problems. I chose the mouth called dull. I haul oil," I said. "I sleep badly. I fall off crates. If your friends lost a mule, ask the mule." His stained fingers tapped the board. "I saw you in 2 places in my head when the lamp fell," he said, softer. "Heads make mistakes in fire. I am paid to correct mistakes into useful stories. Demon twin, traitor hireling. Either can be inked. Which ink do you prefer to buy against?" Near exposure had found a professional mouth, not Kell's half-belief, a man who sold paper to power. I let my hands shake a little because shaken boys look buyable. "I prefer no ink," I said. "I have a coin." I did not touch the merchant's heavy coin in my seam. I showed a thinner piece and set it on his board. He looked insulted, as if he had hoped for a throat and received a crust. "Not enough," he said. "Then write your notice," I said, "and let dull become hard. Write that a clerk helped hang a net on a wall for slavers and burned his own sleeve. Spears might like that story too. My master hates Spears, but he hates stolen oil more, and he saw the net. A bluff with bones." The clerk's eyes narrowed. He had not expected the crate boy to counter with mutually assured paperwork. "Careful," he said. "I am always careful," I said. "It is why I am still thin instead of sold." He glanced toward his canopy patron, calculating which fire burned hotter. "A larger coin tomorrow," he said. "Or I ink both of you, the yard and the twin. I do not need to believe the twin. I only need others to enjoy believing." He flicked my coin back onto my chest. I left it in the dust. Bending can look like bowing. I walked away with empty hands and a spine that wanted to run. Kell read my face at the post and waited until we were stacking jars. "He wants money or a story," I said. "Story has room for a twin." "Then we break his board," Kell said. "No," I said too fast. "Breaking boards makes louder stories. I will handle it." "How?" Kell said. "Badly," I said, and almost smiled. Through the afternoon, I worked errands past a public notary stone, where men paid to have debts shouted. I needed the clerk afraid of ordinary systems, not miracles. I split once in a rented privy stall behind a beer shed, and sent a second body to a rooftop while Scout Me stood in line for salt the master had not asked for. From the roof, I watched Counter approach the clerk near second heat. Words, coin, a folded scrap into the clerk's tunic, orders, timetables, my thin shape and our yard. I reeled before roof time became a habit a child could schedule. Scout Me bought salt and returned to be shouted at for spending. Loud, ordinary anger washes quiet plots from the air. Night again. The master set 3 watches. I took middle. Kell took early and refused to sleep after, sitting with a stick and a stare. I could not split under that stare. Friend had become surveillance with good intentions, so I used mouth instead of twin. In the dead stretch, I woke the master with a whisper about the clerk, the net, the folded scrap, counter's coin. I sounded like a boy afraid of spears and notices. Little acting required. The master cursed all clerks and kings and boys who brought problems after dark. Then he did something useful. He sent a paid runner to a man who hated the canopy patron for old measure fraud. Road merchants keep spite the way squirrels keep nuts. Before dawn, the spite matured. Men arrived with the rival and a spearman who liked looking upright in public. They pulled the clerk from a cot and found the scrap naming our yard, a time and a price per head. Not a twin, better, a Snatch contract in clumsy ink. I watched from the gate as the clerk's fee smile died. Counter was not found. Scar was not found. The scrap put the clerk in a room with questions and put our master in a mood that mixed triumph with the urge to leave before triumph grew a tax. We loaded hard. The master slapped my shoulder with almost fondness and said if I ever woke him again with sense, he might stop hitting me for sport. I did not believe him. I filed the warmth as weather, not climate. On the way out, Kell walked close. You handled it, he said. Paper handled it, I said. Paper is a knife that does not look like one. And the twin, he said, so soft the gate noise nearly ate it. There is no twin, I said, and for that breath lie and deeper truth held the same shape. No twin, only Sami. One mind, many possible skins, none for Kell's inventory. He accepted the closed door again. The road south opened pale and hot. Behind us, a clerk learned the cost of selling both sides. Ahead, Counter still owned his calm. First near exposure had worn stained fingers. I had beaten the fingers without showing the craft. That was the win. It tasted like salt I had not needed, and a law that still fit under my tongue like a second tooth. 2 days out from the market town, the country wrinkled into low ridges and dry gullies. We were leaner of gossip and heavier of caution. The master kept the line tight enough to choke. I hauled, flinched, ate, and practiced being one until the habit hurt less than wanting. Counter returned as weather, not as a face. A water skin went missing. A mule's hobble was half cut and found before disaster. A forward boy swore someone called his name from scrub in his mother's voice. None of it was proof. All of it was pressure. Pressure makes camps stupid. Stupid camps make mistakes Counter can price. On the third night, the pressure found a name I could not dull away. Kell did not come back from a wood run. He had taken an axe and a short rope and a joke about coast women needing strong arms. Dusk ate the slope. Full dark arrived without him. The master cursed, sent 2 torches a little way, then called them back because oil mattered and one absence could be desertion as easily as capture. He ran, the master said. Soft hands, soft heart, good riddance. I stood very still so I would not split in front of 20 witnesses. The fold under my ribs slammed like a trapped bird. Threads pull. This one sawed bone. I asked for leave to search. The master refused, hit me, refused again, and said if I left anyway, he would not have me back even as a stain on the rope. I waited until second watch, when eyes thin, water skin under tunic, knife-checked, heavy coin untouched, over the penstones on my belly like shame. Outside, night was a cold bowl. I split under a gully lip. Scout took Kell's slope. Shadow cut a parallel ridgeline. The net stretched with thin static like old blood. Still near enough, still one will. Scout found the axe first, dropped near thorn, edge clean. Heels dragged in dust, adult prints deep. A gait that might have been Scar's careful knee. Taken alive. Alive is leverage. Leverage is hostage arithmetic. Shadow saw the cart in a ridge cut where wind covered sound. 1 shuttered lamp, 2 mules, a canvas lump that might have been sacks or a person, Counter on a stool like a man at a ledger, shut knife pacing, Scar on high watch. I reeled to one in the gully to think without doubled breath, options like bad bread. Wake the caravan, Kell cut in confusion, craft exposed, master selling my hours after. Trade myself, both sold, craft caged, Counter studying a miracle with rope and time. Bait clone with teeth, show the thin boy they want, bag the bait, cut the hostage with shadow. Reel before proof hardens. Risk everything, reward Kel breathing, and the public lie still wearing one mouth. I chose 3 because 1 and 2 were different graves with cleaner headstones. I split again. Bait walked the open cut with hands visible, knife left under a gully stone, because bait with a blade makes grabbers check hollows. Shadow climbed the back of Scar's watch rock with raw palms. Bait called, you wanted thin. You took the wrong back. Trade. Counter's lamp shutter widened, almost pleased, as if a number had landed where predicted. Come alone, he said. Boys like you are always alone, even when they invent friends. I am alone, Bait said, and the deeper truth held. One mind, one bargain, 2 skins. They let Bait approach to spear cast distance. Shut knife came with rope. Scar leaned to see better. The lean Shadow needed. Shadow took Scar from behind with an arm across the throat and the knife only promising. Scar went rigid, sound falls wrong on high rock. Counter did not look up at once. Bait pointed at the canvas. Show him, or I walk and you chase echoes. Canvas peeled, Kel bound and gagged, bruise owning half his face, alive, angry, afraid. His eyes found Bait and then, God's cruel, flicked toward the rock as Scar's foot scraped. Do not count, I begged him inside the net. Do not stack faces. Shut knife moved to bind Bait. I let a loop take one wrist so the scene looked right from the stool. Then Shadow squeezed until Scar's hand flapped and used Scar's own mouth for the night's second voice. Cut the middle boy free, Shadow made Scar rasp, or your high man dies loud. Counter looked up. Lamp showed a thin boy half-bound in the cut and a thin shape on the rock holding his scarred dog. Arithmetic broke. He had to choose a story while a knife wrote urgency on Scar's neck. The hostage is the point, Bait whispered. Coin walks, corpses stink. Free him, keep me. Kill the high grudge later if you need pride. A shape of deal Counter's kind understand. Goods transferred, pride deferred. He flicked 2 fingers, shut knife cut Kel, and shoved him stumbling like discarded rind. Kel ripped his gag and looked back once, twice, stacking what he should not. Then survival took him downslope toward the caravan's faint glow. Shadow did not kill Scar. Killing hardens hunts. Shadow cracked his head with the knife butt and let him drop. Bait twisted from the half-loop and kicked dirt into Counter's eyes. Shut knife lunged. Bait ran toward the gully stone where the real knife waited, drawing chase. On the rock, Shadow reeled hard. Blank white, iron in the nose. Static roared because Bait still ran in the cut. I sent Bait over the lip, grabbed the hidden knife, and folded 2 into 1 under loose stones clattering like a small landslide. I lay in grit, tasting blood and lamp smoke, and listened to Shut Knife curse the dark. Counter called off a longer chase with a voice like ice. They still had mules and rope. They no longer had Kel or me. They had a broken story and Scar unconscious and a hatred that would not need ink to travel. I crawled, crouched, ran. Kel met me halfway, stick in hand, tears cutting clean lines through dust. 2, he said, on the rock and in the cut, 2. Heat and lamp and fear, I said, spitting red. Count again, 1. If you love your breath, 1. He shook his head and then, slowly, as if setting down a jar that might explode, nodded. 1, he repeated, empty and obedient and not convinced, for now. We slipped into camp under the master's snore. Kel said wood and a fall and scrub thieves who ran. I said I found him by luck. Luck is a story people allow at dawn. We drank water and sat shoulder to shoulder until our hearts stopped trying to leave. Hostage arithmetic had closed in our favor. The cost sat between us like a third body neither would name. Near exposure had moved into Kel's eyes as a permanent tenant. 2 mouths could still speak one lie. Whether Kel's mouth would hold that lie when daylight made him brave again was a problem for the next son and every son after, until silence became his habit too. Dawn made liars of everyone who had been brave in the dark. Kel's bruise had ripened to a purple map. My nose crust looked like a mule kick again, which was convenient. The master accepted the wood run story with a grunt and a threat about next time deserting into scrub for romance. He put both of us on middle rope where he could see us waste his water with our damaged faces. Daylight after 2 is harder than night with 2. Night forgives blur. Day asks for edges. I felt those edges on my tongue every time I swallowed dust and chose which sentence to serve next. Kel walked within arm's reach and said almost nothing for the first heat. When he drank, he watched my throat move as if checking whether one swallow served one body. I let him. Surveillance born of rescue is still affection with armor on. At the first rest, he finally spoke, low, while we checked a strap the master had not asked us to check. I will say 1, he said. Out loud if anyone asks, 1. But inside my skull, the rock and the cut are still stacked. Do not ask me to unsee. Ask me to shut up. I can shut up. That is all I ask, I said. Is it a curse, he said. It is a tool, I said, and hated how true and how small that sounded. A tool that eats the user if the user performs. He nodded as if I had described a sharp axe. Axes he understood. He tied the strap harder than needed and walked back to his place. I spent the day sanding every public edge of the night. When a drover asked how scrub thieves fought, I said badly, with a lamp and bad rope. When another asked why Kel's wrists were raw, I said thorn and panic. When the master asked why I looked like I had cried iron, I said dust and a fall down a gully. 3 mouths around me, 1 lie from me, repeated until it bored them. Boredom is a better scrub than denial. Counter did not show a dust smudge. That absence worried me more than a chase. Men like Counter rewrite ledgers after a loss. Rewrites take time and new ink and sometimes new partners. I watched the hills anyway until my eyes watered, because not watching is how weather arrives unannounced. On the march, I kept my hands busy with knots that did not need retying. Busy hands look innocent. Innocent is a costume I am learning to sew without visible stitches. A drover offered me watered beer for the story of the scrub thieves. I took a sip, gave him 3 dull sentences, and returned the skin before gratitude could become a second audience. We camped early near a dry spring boxed by old stones. I wanted farthest picket. The master gave me latrine duty instead, which is a kind of farthest picket with worse poetry. Alone with stink and flies, I pulsed a hand-width otherness and reeled it, checking the net for cracks left by last night's static roar. The link answered clean, a little sore, like a muscle that had lifted too much. Good enough. Kel found me after and offered bread without mint. Mint gone to the cause days ago. If they take me again, he said, do not come as 2 where I can see. Come as whatever keeps you free enough to cut. I do not want to be the reason a story gets a priest. You will not be, I said. You cannot promise that, he said. I can promise I will try to make the world miscount, I said. That is the only promise that matches the tool. He almost laughed, then touched his bruise and did not. We sat until the bread was gone and the spring stones held only our silence and a beetle's stubborn tour of a crack. Night watch rotated. I took middle and walked the ring as one. No drills. Drills can become a drug. The law is not appetite in a cleaner shirt. The law is refusal repeated until refusal is faster than hunger. Toward the end of watch, a fox screamed in the hills, and every mule answered with philosophy. In that noise, I allowed myself 1 full private inventory. Girl in reeds, saved with stones and stolen voice. Plain snatch, panic birth, near legend, mule kick lie. Bag bait, twin visible to hunters, friend lie to camp. Market lane, chaos ordinary, net on wall, no public twin. Clerk, paper knife, snatch contract, exposure delayed. Ridge cut, hostage out, counters arithmetic broken. Kel holding 1 lie with both hands while his eyes kept 2. Promise of the chapter. Slaver snatch, bait clone warfare, first near exposure. All three were no longer plans, they were scars. Scars can be maps if you refuse to display them as medals. I finished the watch and slept as one boy between a snoring drover and Kel's careful stillness. Once in the night, Kel whispered my name as if testing whether two throats would answer. One throat did. He exhaled like a man who has checked a door twice and still does not trust the latch, and then he slept, or pretended to, with enough skill that I could pretend with him. Before true sleep took me, I touched the coin seam and the knife wrap and the place under the sternum where the fold lived. All present, all quiet. The road south still waited with its lists and its ropes and its men who thought bodies were numbers. I had spent numbers back at them and remained, for now, uncollected. Daylight after 2 would last longer than one dawn. It would be a weather we carried. I could live in that weather. I had to. The alternative was a clean confession and a cage with scholars for wardens, or a glorious rumor and a road full of hunters who wanted to own a miracle by the ankle. Ordinary light returned, ordinary curses, ordinary rope on ordinary shoulders. I took my place in line and made my face as interesting as dust. Behind my teeth, the second tooth of the law sat polished, split only in shadow, strike only as accident. Never let a friend's eyes become a temple where the true count is worshipped out loud. The next town was barely a town, a toll post, a beer shed, a shrine, a row of houses that looked surprised to still be standing. The master paid a copper bite for the road and tried to sell oil to men who preferred cheaper lies about bandits ahead. I watered mules and kept my head under a yoke like a good animal. Counter's new ink found us there anyway. It came as a notice pinned beside the shrine, written in a neat hand that wanted to be official. Unlicensed twin fighters and rope thieves working the South Road. Thin curly boy, sometimes seen with a double. Reward for delivery to a named yard 2 days west. No questions, coin on proof. No questions is a phrase that means violence has a budget. A small crowd read and spat and enjoyed the shiver. Twin fighters. Demon talk with a price tag. Someone laughed and said the writer had been drinking lamp oil. Someone else said he had a cousin who saw doubles in fever. The notice was already breeding. Kel went stiff at my shoulder. I pinched his elbow hard enough to hurt and walked us both away before his face could become a caption. Behind a cart wheel, he started to speak, and I shook my head once. Words near a shrine grow ears. We carried water instead and let our silence look like work. In the beer shed shade, I breathed until my hands obeyed. This was a different near exposure than Kel's eyes or a clerk's threat. This was a public tool. Anyone with greed could become a hunter. The caravan itself could start counting me for coin. I needed the notice to become a joke or a fraud before it became a census. The master's voice rose at the toll post. He had seen the paper. He hated anything that made buyers nervous about oil strings. He tore the notice down himself and crumpled it, which only made 2 men memorize harder. Superstition, he bellowed. Bad for trade, bad for digestion. My boys are single and stupid, as the gods intended, single and stupid. I could work with that. I asked leave to buy onions and took it before he could invent a no. Behind the shed row, I split clean and fast. Scout Me went to the beer shed and drank a swallow of sour, listening. Shadow Me went to the shrine wall with a scrap of charcoal stolen from a cold brazier and wrote under the torn notice's nail hole in a clumsy other hand. False reward, debt trick. Ask the market clerk with burned sleeve, not elegant. Elegant is memorable. Clumsy accusations feel like ordinary spite, and ordinary spite is believed on roads where everyone has been cheated once. I reeled shadow, coughed once, and let Scout become the only body again. Nose damp, acceptable. By the time I returned with onions, the beer shed was already arguing about burned sleeves and debt tricks. A toll man said he had heard of a clerk dragged by spears in the last market. Truth travelling under a false flag. Perfect. The twin line became embroidery people picked at and discarded for the juicier Clark scandal. Kel watched me set onions down and said nothing. His silence had layers now. Loyalty, fear, a question he had agreed not to ask in daylight. We left the Barley town at a pace the master called brisk and the mules called insult. On a rise, I looked back and saw a man copy something from memory onto a wax tablet anyway. Not all ink dies when paper tears. Some of Counter's new ink lived in heads. Heads travel. That night I told the master, carefully, that reward notices make boys targets, and targets make oil strings bleed. He snarled that he already knew, and that if I grew a second head he would charge admission and then sell me to a temple. Humor like a stick. I laughed because laughing was the correct tax. Later, on picket, I drilled distance again. Scout at the fire's edge light, shadow 50 paces into dark. Static rose sooner than I liked, a reminder that the ridge hostage night had left the net tender. I did not push to 100. Pride is how freelancing starts. I reeled and sat with the tender place until it stopped buzzing. Doctrine found a new line. If the enemy writes you public, do not write yourself clearer. Write the enemy messier. Mud on their ledger. Rivalries, burned sleeves, debt. Never a sermon about your own soul. Souls attract collectors with cleaner hands than counters. Kell joined the end of my watch with a stick and a bruise turning yellow at the edges. If a notice ever says my name beside yours, he said, I will still say one. Do not put yourself on paper for me, I said. I am already on the rock in my head, he said. Paper is only louder. We stood together counting stars that did not care how many bodies a boy could be. Then he went to sleep, and I remained one silhouette against ordinary dark. A thin shape reward notices would keep trying to double, a mind that would keep answering with one mouth, and a shadow that only existed when arithmetic required interest paid in risk. Counter had new ink. I had new sand for his ink. The war of bait and bag had become a war of stories, and stories, unlike rope, can be cut in public without showing the knife that lived under my ribs. Before sleep, I walked the ring once more and greeted no one by name. Names stick to notices too easily. On this road, I was still the thin one, the rear rope, the boy who flinched on cue and sometimes spoke too loudly on bridges of the mind. Those titles were shields. I polished them with silence and with the kind of useful stupidity masters prefer in property that walks. If Counter's ink found another wall tomorrow, I would meet it with more sand, more spite, more ordinary mess. Never a confession. Never a miracle polished for sale. Only Sami, errand stock, miscounted on purpose, still walking south with a forever folded, small enough to pass a toll man's bored stick. The toll road south of the Barley town ran straight enough to make ambush a matter of patience rather than geography. We took it because the master loved straight lines the way he loved full jars. I hated it for the same reason. Straight lines are easy ledgers. Near midday, a cluster of riders blocked a narrow stone bridge with the casual ownership of men who have paid someone for the right to be a problem. Not full soldiers, not open bandits. Sashes that suggested client-king authority if you did not look at the frayed edges. At their center, not riding but standing beside a mule, as if humility were a costume, was Counter. Beside him, Scar with a cleaner knee wrap and a face like postponed murder. Shut Knife held a rope coil without shame, a toll for special cargo, Counter called. Thin boys, soft mouths, anyone the road has already priced. The master began a legal argument with spit. I felt the caravan tighten. Kell's breath changed beside me. This was not a scrub snatch. This was theatre with a bridge for a stage and witnesses who might become a jury or a market depending on who bled first. If I split now in full sun on stone, every mouth would stack me. If I did not, Counter might simply point and claim the notice's thin curly boy as forfeit. Bait clone warfare needed a new costume, two mouths that were not two bodies. I stepped forward before the master sold a worse idea. I am the one in your song, I said, loud enough for the bridge. I am also tired of your song. You lost a clerk, you lost a net, you lost a hostage. Now you wear a sash and call theft a toll. If your kinglet owns this bridge, show a mark that is not frayed. If not, move, or the next notice will name your face and your limp and your rope. Scar started forward. Counter lifted 2 fingers and Scar stopped, a dog trained to math. Brave mouth, Counter said. Do you have another? The air thinned. Kel's hand found a stick. The master's face went red enough to dye cloth. I laughed, ugly and public. I have the mouth that shouts and the mouth that bargains, I said. Both are mine. Both say the same lie you keep buying, that I am worth more than the trouble of taking me in front of men who sell oil to the same houses that buy your sash. Take me, and you buy a feud with every string on this road. Leave, and you keep your calm name. Calm names spend better than bloody ones. 2 mouths, 1 lie. The lie was economic, not miraculous. Men understand coin threats better than twin demons. A rider with a less frayed sash looked at Counter with the beginning of doubt. Doubt is a crack. I drove a wedge made of ordinary spite. He writes false twin notices to raise prices, I said to that rider. Ask in the last market about a clerk with a burned sleeve and a scrap that priced heads. Ask who paid for the scrap. Then ask if your house wants that smell on its bridge. Counter's calm finally showed a hairline fracture. Not rage, recalculation. Public was not his favorite weather. He preferred lanes and gullies and boys who walked bowel habits alone. The master, sensing a shift that might save oil, roared agreement and invented 3 powerful cousins who would be furious if his line was delayed. Road merchants always own cousins in emergencies. Sometimes the cousins even exist. Shut knife, fingered rope. Scar looked at my throat. Counter smiled with only half his mouth. Another day, he said, as if scheduling rain. He moved his riders off the bridge with the dignity of a man who has not lost because he has not finished. That dignity was a promise. Promises from Counter arrived with knots. We crossed in a clatter of hooves and held breath. On the far side, Kel walked so close our sleeves talked. You used 2 mouths, he whispered. Same tongue, I said. Count the bodies. 1, he did, with his eyes, right there on the road, and the checking itself hurt and helped. Habit for him, proof for any watcher who saw only a bruised boy staring at a thin friend. A drover clapped my shoulder and called me a little lawyer with dirt in his hair. I took the insult as cover and asked him about onion prices until the bridge and the sashes fell behind the curve of the road. Cover loves small talk. Small talk is a fog you can walk through without leaving a silhouette shaped like destiny. That evening, the master gave me a strip of better meat and said if I ever spoke for his caravan again, I should mention richer cousins. Praise like a slap. I ate and said yes. After dark, I split once behind the latrine stones, not for war, for repair. Full second body seated, hand to hand, checking the net after daylight strain and bridge fear. The link held, static low. I let the second self breathe 10 slow breaths as a reward and a warning, then reeled before longing could name itself. Counter had been forced into open weather and had chosen retreat over proof. That was a battle win. War continued. He still had sashes to borrow, notices to plant, patience to spend. I still had one public face and a law that forbade me the comfort of becoming a legend on a bridge. I slept as one. I dreamed of a bridge where every stone was a mouth saying the same price, and I woke before the dream could make me answer in chorus. Morning put us farther south, oil intact, names uncaptured, 2 mouths rested in one jaw, one lie still earning its keep against men who wanted the truth to be a chain. In the grey before the master shouted us vertical, I checked the law the way I checked the knife wrap. Still tight, still ugly, still mine. Counter would schedule his reign. I would schedule my dullness. Between his schedule and mine, the road would keep taking coin and breath from everyone, fair only in its indifference, and somewhere under that indifference, a boy with echo craft would keep refusing the crown that notices and sashes tried to nail to his thin, curly head. Holding a lie is not a single act. It is a chore list. Morning, wear one face. Noon, sand gossip. Evening, check the friend who knows too much. Night, decide whether the net may breathe. Dawn, begin again before pride wakes. I ran that list for 3 days of road that pretended to be empty. Empty roads are liars too. They hide their teeth in distance. I kept rear habits even on middle rope. Eyes on hills, ears on gossip, hands on knots that did not need me. The master called it fidgeting. I called it staying alive in advance. Kel practiced silence the way I practiced splits, with awkward starts and better finishes. Once he almost told a joke about twins to a drover and bit it into a cough. I pretended not to notice. Noticing would have made the almost into a thing with weight. He shot me a look that said he knew I had noticed and that the cough still counted as a pass. Friendship had become a second craft between us, uglier than either of us wanted and more necessary than either would admit. The master sold a few jars at a farm compound where dogs knew the difference between hunger and permission. I hauled and smiled with my mouth only. A child stared at my scab and asked if I had fought a god. I told him I had fought a jar and lost. He believed me because jars are more common than gods and twice as mean to boys. A woman there asked if we had seen the twin fighter boys from the notices. I told her notices were how cheats raise prices on fear. She liked that because she hated paying more for fear than for grain. Another mouth, same lie, traveling on bread logic instead of temple logic. I filed the method, matched the lie to the listener's appetite. Near evening of the third quiet day, Scar showed himself alone on a ridge, not closing, only visible, a reminder shaped like a man. He stood long enough to be counted and then limped out of sight. No counter, no shut knife. A single tooth flashed to prove the jaw still lived. The camp muttered. The master ordered tighter watches and blamed me with his eyes for being interesting. I accepted the blame without theatre. Interesting is a stain. I was already washing. That night, Kel took early watch and I took late, so our truths would not sit in the same dark too long. Alone on late watch, I did not split. I wanted the sore net to heal. Wanting healing is still a kind of training. I walked, counted mules, named stars by wrong names to keep my mind from building stages. When a stone clicked on the perimeter, I was only one body with a stick, which was correct, because the click was a hair, and hairs do not require miracles. I thanked the hair under my breath for being ordinary and moved on. At false dawn, I sat with my back to a wheel and whispered the chapter's inventory to the dust, not as pride, as accounting. Slaver Snatch, attempted on a girl, on me, on Kel, on a market yard, broken each time by craft or paper or bargain. Bait clone warfare, born on the plain in panic, refined in scrub, hidden in lanes, refused on a bridge in sunlight. First near exposure, Kel's eyes, a clerk's ink hunger, a notice on a shrine wall, a caravan that had heard a friend lie and a traitor lie, and still mostly preferred oil to metaphysics. The lie held, not perfectly. Perfectly is a story people tell after wine. It held like a patched skin holds water, with seepage, with attention, with the promise of another patch tomorrow. I thought of the limestone teeth far behind, and the basin's milk light and the ages waiting in stone outlines. Road south had already spent more of my secret than the ridge hunters had. Spending is not the same as revealing. Coins can leave your hand without your name leaving with them, if you are careful which market you enter. I touched the seamed coin once through cloth and left it unspent again. Future crumbs, future doors, not today. Kel came off sleep early and sat without asking. Still one, he said, a greeting and a check. Still one, I said. He rubbed his bruise, yellow now, almost ordinary. Ordinary is a gift injuries give if you let them fade without speeches. If I ever stack you out loud, he said, hit me. If you stack me out loud, I said, I will call you drunk and laugh until other men laugh with me. Hitting is a seam. Laughter is weather. He snorted. Weather, he said, you and your words. Words are rope, I said. They pull or they bind. I am trying to pull. The master shouted the morning into existence. We stood, we loaded, we became a line again. Scar's ridge was empty. Counter's patience somewhere else wrote itself into a future page I could not yet read. Rome's rumor still walked nearer the sea with better boots. None of that cancelled the fact that Kel breathed free and I walked uncollected, and the oil jars still kissed only straw. Promise paid for this stretch of forever. The snatch had come, the bait had worked, the near exposure had been met with sand and silence, and one friend's hard choice to shut up. Soft cliff ahead, not a false end. Hunters still owned hate. Notices might grow new hands. Distance from the cave still sat under the sternum like a question. None of that undid the win. It only meant the win was a road surface, not a throne room. I tied my rope belt, checked the knife wrap, felt the coin's small weight, and took my place. No banner, no confession, no second body for the morning count. Only Sami, still errand stock, walking south with two mouths resting in one jaw and one lie held long enough to become, for a while, the shape of survival itself. The creek talked to stones behind camp. I listened until the talk became only water again, then slept as one under a sky that did not bother to count. Patience has a cousin named Spite, and Spite gets bored sooner. On a morning of high white cloud that made the heat feel personal, Spite came down from the ridges in Scar's body with 2 hired sticks and no counter in sight. That absence was information. Either counter had cut Scar loose as a bad number, or counter was testing whether hate could succeed where calm had stalled. They hit the rear during a mule stop, fast and ugly, not for a quiet bag, but for a public crippling. Scar wanted me broken in front of eyes, so the notice's thin boy would be easy to claim after. One hireling swung for my knee. The other went for Kel because hate has learned my threads. A mule shied and bought half a second of confusion. Half seconds are fortunes if you spend them at once. There was no clean scrub hollow, no night curtain, only dust, mules, and 10 witnesses within shout. Law screamed against a full split. Arithmetic screamed that without something impossible, Kel's new-healed wrists would open again, and my knee would become Counter's easiest invoice. I chose a compromise with blood already priced in. I did not birth a second standing body in the eyeline. I ghosted a half-presence hard enough to shove my own shoulder from an angle a single skeleton should not manage, a lurch that looked like mule panic telegraphed through rope, and used that wrong angle force to throw the knee-man into the hireling attacking Kel. Men swear mules move demons when they are scared. I gave them a mule story in advance by screaming the animal's name as if it had kicked through me. The pile of hired sticks hit dirt. Scar came through them with a short blade and real skill. He had stopped performing limp. His eyes had too much white. This was not capture math. This was kill math dressed in old embarrassment. Kel swung a water skin and bought me a breath. I took the breath and the knife from my wrap and did not fence like a hero. Heroes get songs. I cut Scar's knife hand across the tendons he needed for grips, and then drove my forehead into his nose, the way alley boys settle theology. He dropped, he cursed, he tried to rise and saw at last a ring of caravan sticks arriving with the master's roar behind them. Now the scene had too many witnesses for a bag and too much blood for a clean lie about nothing. I needed the lie fast and simple before someone smart stacked the mule lurch with older stories. He paid a last price for a notice, I shouted, voice raw. Scar from the rope crew wanted me for coin. Look at his blade, look at his friends, true enough to walk, incomplete enough to live. The hirelings ran, one left a sandal. Scar tried to crawl and found the master's boot on his wrist. The master, for once, chose useful cruelty. He bound Scar to a cartwheel and promised to sell him to the next client king rider as a gift wrapped in testimony. Scar laughed blood and looked only at me. I saw 2 of you in the gully, he said thickly. I will say it until my tongue rots. Say it, I said, loud for the ring. Say demons while you bleed. It makes honest men laugh and buyers walk away. I am one boy. Count. They counted. 1. Bloody forehead, knife wet. Kel panting with a water skin. Mules rolling eyes. The count held because people prefer counts that let them keep moving. Scar's eyes promised a longer war than his mouth could fund today. Then the master gagged him, because the master hated speeches that did not advertise oil. We moved within the hour. Scar dragged on a short lead like a mean dog until a rider with a real sash accepted him as a problem that could buy favor. Coin changed hands. Spite left our line in chains that looked official enough. I felt no triumph. I felt a door close on one tooth while the jaw somewhere else still thought. Kel washed my forehead with water that stung. You almost became two, he said under the cloth. I became a mule story, I said. Laugh if anyone asks. He laughed once on command, brittle, then for real when the absurdity caught him. Laughter sanded the moment. Good. That night the camp treated me like a sharp tool they were not sure they owned. Respect is another kind of notice. I dulled myself with latrine work and stupid jokes until the respect got bored. Bored is safe. A drover offered me a second strip of meat for the tail. I took the meat, gave him a dull sentence about rope crews and greed, and let him invent the rest. Invented rest is safer than accurate beginnings. Under blanket, I checked the net. The ghost shove had left a tremor, smaller than a full berth, nastier in its wrongness, like using a chisel as a lever. Tools remember misuse. I breathed through it and promised the craft cleaner manners next time. Promises to yourself are still contracts if you collect. Counter remained uncollected. That was the true unfinished price. Scar had been hate's bill. Counter was the ledger. Ledgers do not die when one line is crossed out. They wait for the next column. I slept as one with a scab forming between my eyes like a bad star. Kel slept close enough that any bag would have to decide which body was bait. I hated that arithmetic and loved the loyalty inside it, and filed both under problems for a longer life. South still called, the cave still waited behind us as a held breath. Echocraft still sat under my ribs with iron taste in memory and future ages in outline. The lie had held through spite's boredom. Holding was becoming my real profession. Hauling oil was only the costume the profession wore in daylight. Before sleep fully took me, I whispered the old lines once more so the scab between my eyes would not become a crown. Never perform, never confess, never trust gratitude forever. Keep the chain secret even from the parts of me that wanted applause from the dark. Then I slept as one, and the camp for a few hours believed me. Evening put copper on different hills and ordinary light on ordinary faces once more. We camped in a bowl off the south road where a thin creek argued with stones, far enough from the bridge, the market, the barely town shrine, and Scar's last white-eyed charge that those things could become stories instead of weather. Stories can be managed, weather only endured. I walked the first 100 steps out of camp toward the creek as if I might rinse a scab and stopped where other people could still see me as one silhouette. Not a private departure into seams, not a stage, just a boy at the edge of firelight testing whether the world still accepted the count of one. It did. A drover glanced and looked away. A mule drank. Somewhere a man repaired a sandal with the concentration of prayer. Ordinary light forgave what it did not notice. I turned back to the yard fires, our small borrowed yard of dust and ringed beasts, and ate lentils that tasted like smoke and grit. I laughed at a stupid joke about a kinglet and a goose, so my mouth would look like everyone else's mouth. The laugh was real enough in the throat muscles. Under it the law held, split only in shadow, strike only as accident, live long enough to stock ages, become inevitable without becoming famous. Never let two mouths tell two different truths where a living witness can braid them. That was the second chapter of my forever. It looked, on purpose, like a string of ugly accidents and lucky escapes. Yet accidents need edges or they spill into legend. I sat after eating with the knife on my knee and reviewed the road without moving my lips. Slavers with rope under canvas, reed girl and stolen patrol voice, panic berth on the plain, bait walks, bag and twin, traitor lie outrunning twin lie, market net and burning sleeve, Clark's stained fingers turned against him with paper, Kell taken, ridge cut, two bodies in one friend's eyes and one word chosen, one. Notices, sand on ink, bridge mouths, Scar's last price paid in tendons and a sash rider's chains, counter still somewhere with calm unbroken and a ledger open, promise paid for this stretch, Snatch met, bait clone warfare proven, near exposure survived without a temple and without a cage, soft cliff ahead, not a false end, counter's reign still scheduled, Rome's lists still taller somewhere near a salt air, Distance from the seam, still a question under the bone. None of that cancelled the victory. It only meant victory remained a road and not a throne. Kel dropped onto the dust beside me and offered a heel of bread. His bruise was a memory trying to become skin again. "You always look like you are listening to a second camp," he said. "Dust in the ears," I said, "makes echoes." He accepted that because roadmen accept half answers when bread is shared, and because he now knew which echoes were real and had agreed to treat them as dust anyway. We chewed. He talked about a coast town with a door he might rent if wages ever loved him. I made small noises in the right places. When he left, I was still one boy with crumbs on his tunic. Night thickened. Watch assignments went around. I took a late turn because late turns are lonelier, and loneliness is safer for a pulse check under cloak. Stars were hard and numerous. The camp snored in uneven weather. I walked my sector, counted shapes that belonged, and once, only once, let a hand width of otherness press against the inside of my wrist, like a second heart learning manners after a week of bad lessons. Then I put it away, nose dry. Good. Toward the end of watch, no torches moved on the far road. Absence can be mercy. Absence can be aim. I told the next watch the road was quiet and let him own the quiet. Information without theater. He grunted. Ordinary night resumed its ownership of our fear. I slept after and dreamed the basin's milk light climbing a row of wrists that were all mine at different years. Child, boy, man, older than man. Between them stood thin copies with rope burns and market dust and bridge light on their faces, a crowd of spent days. The nested wall outlines stepped down into dust and followed me south without footprints. I woke before the dream could become a speech and wiped my face as if sweat were the only liquid involved. Dawn would put us back on the road. The master would curse, the mules would argue with fate. I would haul, flinch when useful, refuse when hungry for display, keep Kel's silence watered like a fragile crop, and keep the first law polished on the underside of every errand. If counter wrote me again, I would answer with sand. If rope came again, I would answer with bait that did not love the spotlight. If Kel's eyes stacked me in a weak hour, I would answer with laughter weather until the stack fell into joke. If the cave's prior debts collected interest, I would pay in secret practice, not in public wonder. I stood in ordinary light when the sun finally cleared the hill and stretched until the stick maps on my shoulders pulled. Around me, men became vertical and noisy. I tied my rope belt, checked the knife wrap, felt the coin's small weight, and took my place in line. No banner, no confession, no pillar of light for the storytellers, no second shadow at my heels for the morning count. Behind us, somewhere in gossip, a gagged hate might still whisper too. Ahead of us, roads thickened toward coasts and tall spears and men who thought lists could own breath. Between behind and ahead stood me, ordinary in copper morning, lentils still a taste under onion, scab between the eyes like a failed star, law tighter than rope. Only Sami, errand stock, one boy still, walking south with a secret large enough to outlive empires if he never let it look like one. The cliff of the day was soft and bright and full of dust. I stepped over it the way you step over a route you have already named. Carefully, without announcing the name, and already planning the next step in a life that would be many and must, for now and for as long as two mouths can share one lie, keep faith with one.